Clifton Warren, welcome to Ordinary Visionaries.
Glad to be here.
So, Clifton, I've known you for a while. You were a client for a while, a few years back. You've been on my list for God knows how many years. And so I'm glad you're on the interview here. I think we'll have a good time. So tell me, how are you an ordinary visionary?
It's funny when you first started producing this series, and I saw Ordinary Visionary, I never really given that much thought. But then as I watched the interviews and I started thinking about my work and where I am now, I discovered something or remembered something more than likely. And it was something I picked up from Alan Weiss. When you're in your marketplace, there's three things you need to have. There has to be a market need. You have to be competent to be able to deliver that. And you got to have the passion. And so I found myself being an ordinary visionary because of my those three things, particularly the passion. And I work in the financial services space, particularly in distribution. So I'm working with owners, leaders to help them maximize the value of their business right across from selling, making sure that they're acquiring clients, retaining clients, developing clients, and so forth. But the ordinary visionary part comes in is that the thing I'm getting a kick out of more than anything else today is helping new professionals, brand new people, really find their mark and acquire the skills they need to succeed in this industry. And that's a white space that's not being taught today. We have an industry that's over compliant, but the one thing that they don't teach someone is how to build an ethical, sustaining client base in a business. And so that's the ordinary visionary space I feel, particularly in the younger generation, to help them develop those skills.
Sounds a bit like what I did with self-employed professionals. So who are these people exactly that you're working with?
A lot of these people are insurance brokers, general insurance brokers, professionals, wealth advisors, finance brokers, and insurance companies and underwriting agencies as such that need to distribute. So it's pretty much a very defined niche. So I call it banking, insurance, and finance.
Right.
But it's the ones that need to go out and acquire, retain, develop clients.
So what's their biggest challenge?
Well, for the newer professionals who I have my passion in, it's how to do it. And, we have an industry now that around the world, and I work across Australia, New Zealand, United States, that our industry has become heavily regulated. Protect the consumers, protect businesses. And so there's a whole list of do's and don'ts that the professional needs to do. But the one thing that they're struggling against now is, wow, we got to do all this, but actually, how do we go out and acquire clients? What do you do? How do you actually go about doing that now in this modern world? How do you retain? How do you cross sell? Those skills aren't taught anymore, so they're struggling with that, and the industry is
Those skills
consolidating.
they're not taught anymore by anybody. So, well, I can understand it because I work with self-employed people, and people kind of are, you know, they learn by trial and error, right?
Mhm. Well, when you think about it, you're right in that regard. But when you think about it in the early days, when you entered the industry, you were almost like an apprenticeship. You followed a experienced rainmaker or leader around, and learned your craft and so forth. Those guys have retired from the industry. A lot of those guys are leaving the industry now, and it's very much becoming a sales and marketing business more than anything else. And that's something some people are having trouble getting a hold of. And some are fortunate to have very large portfolios, but nevertheless, it's a sales and marketing business.
So tell me a little bit about your approach to helping these people. What is it that you teach them? What do you have them watch out about? What are the kind of mistakes that you're seeing? And how do you get people on track? I mean, that's about five questions in one, but
Well, let me go back. Let me go back to the beginning. When I
yeah.
entered the industry, um, I was I was fortunate to work for a company like AIG, and I was a state manager in Western Australia, and I got given a portfolio, and I was following someone that was very successful. And he's since went off and did other things. Well, within about 6 months, I lost a good chunk of the portfolio because people didn't know me and they were going off doing business with competitors. I had no relationships. But more importantly, I found out there was no playbook for me to follow. And so I went into my boss one day and said, look, this portfolio is going out the door quite quickly. I'm quite concerned. He looked at me and says, well, you're here to sell. Just go out and do it. So with that motivating advice, I had
It's
to
not
sort of figure it
particularly
out.
useful, is it?
No, it's
Just
not.
get out there and sell. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And,
okay.
through help, books and courses, and, I started to figure it out. I started putting my own playbook together, and that allowed me to win awards and just keep moving on. Fast forward today, the work I do. I mean, I've written books. I've written 5 books,
Well,
and it's really about giving that instruction playbook to people, and that's what I help them with. If they're just starting their business, how do you acquire and build a clientele as such? If you're well experienced, I mean, my last book is called The ABCs of Selling, Guide to Selling Professional Services. Here's some advanced techniques you need to know about accountability and relationships and those things. So it's right across the whole gambit.
so I want to get into some of those nuts and bolts.
Mm-hmm.
Because I understand what I did,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm interested in what you do. What you do. So a client hires you, and they
Mm-hmm.
say, "I need to generate more business." I would assume, is that their issue?
Yeah, generally it's flatline. It's their growth is stagnant. In some cases, it's probably negative as far as annual
Yeah.
growth.
But the clients I worked with were a wide variety of businesses, usually consultants,
Mm-hmm.
coaches, and trainers, and usually
Mm-hmm.
not financial services.
Yep.
So I didn't work with many of those over the years. But so okay, so I'm a young financial professional that needs to get clients. What's
Mm-hmm.
the very first thing I need to do in this process?
Well, the very first thing, and when I work with a client, is understand what they currently have now. And so help them segment their clients. We put them in categories. Quite often, people fall into the service trap and they treat all clients the same. So their C clients are getting the same level of service as their A clients. And matter of fact, at the expense of their A clients, they just take those for granted. So the first thing we do is segment their whatever they have out to ABC. The A's are top 5%, the B's are the next 15%, and the C's are the bottom 80%. And we want to identify and focus on the top 20% that are generating 80% of your revenue. That's where you want to spend the majority of your time to leverage and maximize those. So first thing I do is help them identify where they are in their
So
business.
what makes them? What are the qualifiers that make them A or B clients? How can they recognize? Is it that they simply have more money to invest, or they have larger businesses that they insure, or they're just
Pure,
financially?
purely revenue.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and I qualified it a little bit more. It's currently A and B clients and people that have the potential to become A and B clients somewhere down the future. So it's identifying those relationships that might be very small at the moment, but you can grow with them along the way. And that applies to wealth management where you're dealing with affluent clients, insurance brokers where you're dealing with on the business to business level. The same principles, still apply.
Okay. So I've done some analysis and I've identified my X number of top potential clients.
Mm-hmm.
Then what's your approach? What do you do next? What do you have them
Well,
do?
Well, the first thing I have them do next is that once we identify those A and B clients, and take an example of an insurance professional who might have a portfolio of about 500-600 clients. That's a lot of stuff in there. A and B clients might make up about 75 to 100 of those key relationships there.
Right.
So first thing we want to do is those key relationships. We want to lay them out and see when things are due. The annual reviews, and the surprising thing is. And I call this continuation. A lot of professionals I work with, and this applies across all services industry, don't have a continuation process, which is you want to continue the relationship from year to year. So an insurance guy, they might see the guy at renewal time. They don't have a claim. They may not see them again for the next 12 months. You
Yep.
can't do that anymore in this marketplace, in this economy. There's too many things going on, too many competitors. So the first thing we do is lay out the continuation process. When are things due? And then we start to schedule what things they can be doing to touch base, reach out, just say hello, check up. And for large accounts, we set up what I call a midterm review. So we design a continuation process so that we have a couple touch points to continue to build that relationship with the client.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I called it keep in touch marketing.
Yeah, same principle.
And there's a lot of things you can do for that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to compare notes because what I found in working with clients, when you tell them that, they don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could call you and say, hi, John, I haven't heard from you in a while. I just want to talk. And they say, well, I don't really have time and whatever. So you want to add value in some way. So
Yep.
what are some of your, do you work with them on scripting of what to say and how to say it to take the next step?
Yeah, the first key thing that I do, is I call a midterm review. So 6 months, whatever that relationship is, at the 6 month mark, I want to provide some sort of stewardship to them. So I'm going to use I'm going to use a wealth management guide here. And this is your advice. I call it the advice piece, even though you're getting commission and so forth. And so that midterm review is not a selling opportunity. It's a chance to catch up with the client. You're not selling anything. You catch up over coffee, over donuts, whatever. If it's remotely, you're going to do it over Zoom. And you want to give the client a report. You want to say, basically, here's what we said we're going to do. Here's what we've done. And here's what we're still working on along the way. And here's some obstacles and some ideas I've identified. And I help them design a stewardship report that summarizes the discussion about 1 or 2 pages. Very potent. It's a silent seller because the guy reads it. And, I want to put professionals on the same tier as their accountant, their lawyer, and the other advisors they use, because you're selling a professional service, you're not just a vendor. So that midterm review is the first thing we line up and do. And the tail end of that midterm review, which is stewardship, is to also ask for referrals, which most professionals do not do, or they do it very poorly. So we help them with that scripting.
Well, let's get to that in a few minutes. But
okay.
I like that idea. So you've isolated 75 to 100 clients.
Yep.
Now you spread that over a year, and you've got 2 or 3 a week that you're doing this with, I would guess, maybe more.
Yep.
And so every 6 months or so, give or take, you're meeting with them or talking with them Zoom, looking at their portfolio, talking about next steps, but you're not trying to manipulate them into buying what you think they need. You're really serving them, right?
You're absolutely right. I'm serving them. I'm giving them advice. I'm serving them, building a relationship. I'm also, one of the things I show people is that, firstly, update your CRM. Let's work out where your gaps in information knowledge is about that client. Let's weave that into the discussion when you're having coffee and donuts with them. These are just conversations we're having. We're not selling. But what I'm also doing, as well as the referrals we'll talk about later, I'm also setting up the larger sale down the track for the renewal period. So if I've done my job correctly, I've identified additional risk exposures that we need to talk about down the track. But for now, I just want to flag these with you. I might have identified some best practices in certain industries of what some of my best clients are doing that you need to know about. And that's done in the light of a stewardship. And I call it the advice piece, non-selling advice piece.
So are they not taught that kind of thing from their broker?
No, unfortunately. Where do you deal with mortgages? Mortgage industry is separate. Again, I'll come back to that. But these financial services professionals, they're taught how to renew, how to negotiate with underwriters, how to bind the business and so forth. And if the client has a big claim that they're there for them, But after that, a lot of people are lost on what to do. Some are afraid of annoying their client, disturbing them too much. And so with the continuation process as a midterm, it gives them a valid reason to speak to the client. Now, we set that up in the beginning. When I set up the continuation process with them, I show them how to deliver whatever that they do. So if it's an insurance program that's renewing, we have a formal delivery on that. So instead of just sending stuff out in the mail, 30 days after the period's ended, you call the client up, or you can see them if you can, but you call the client up, make sure everything's okay. If there's any differences, anything they know about, you point out to them and let them know, I'm going to be back in touch with you again in 6 months. And this is what we're going to do in 6 months' time. And that sort of sets the scene. And what you're trying to do is create a point of difference. They're not getting this sort of service from anyone else. And, and so you have a superior point of difference that hopefully you'll be rewarded down the track.
Now, I assume that when you're working with your clients, you're sort of explaining this process to them.
Mm-hmm.
And what's a client's reaction to that hasn't been doing this kind of thing? Is there resistance to it sometimes?
No, it's relief in some ways. Firstly, once you segment their client base, they go, wow, I never knew where I was spending my time. And these are my important people. Once we lay out a continuation process, and it's tailored for each person, and so like molding a suit to the person, they go, wow, this makes sense. I have why I should contact my client midterm. It's going to improve retention, and it's going to help build overall relationships. So it gives them, it's relief. It gives them a track to run on. To plan their day, plan their year along the way.
Yeah. So, so what's the next thing? You set them up with this continuation process. You get them in action. You get a schedule. You identify the people. You start meeting with them. And how does the agent or the financial professional's business starts to shift after that starts to happen?
Well, once we set up the continuation process, and then we lay it out visually also. And I like to, and they can do it themselves or get a graphic artist. I recommend that they get it professionally done, get it labeled and everything else. And if it's a great client, we put the client's logo on there. And so what I want to, when I'm working with the client, and I use this both, I call it offense and defensively. If I'm speaking to a prospective client, I will say, let me show you how we're going to work together once you're a client. And I show them this. And if it's already an existing client, I show, here's the program. Let's map out the dates and so forth along the way. So the next step after we lay all that out, we start to put some scripts in place. And the scripts are very loose. They're more conversation guides, checklists on what they need to do, particularly at the midterm. If it's a large client, we then decide, does this client deserve a quarterly phone call just to check up? Is everything going okay? Or I look for triggering events, like Joe Conrath will say. If there's been a big storm or an earthquake, pick up the phone. Hey, is everything okay? Just checking in on you. I'll be back in touch again in 3 or 4 months. So I want to make sure we have those touch points along the way. But it's setting up that lead up to that referral discussion that we want to have with the client.
Okay. So what's next? Do you have them do any kind of keep in touch marketing, like newsletters or anything like that? That was my main technique.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have the kind of business where I had a lot of people on my list that weren't clients.
Mm-hmm.
But by being in front of them over a period of time, and then I made an offer, and they've been warmed up. That's how you became a client.
Yeah.
That's almost all my clients came. So anyway, I don't know if you do that or not, but
what the answer is yes, after we lay the foundation.
Right.
So with this, because some of them are sending newsletters and things like that, but it's generic stuff that's done by a manufacturer somewhere, and everyone's sending out the same thing. So I want to make sure we have that foundation laid, and we want to communicate with the right people. So we're talking about keep in touch marketing. Once the foundation is laid, we work on newsletters. We work on other things that they might do along the way. But the phone calls and that human touch is very much the keep in touch marketing, particularly in financial services. It's more important than ever.
Yeah, it's making me think. I have all my money invested in one company, my retirement funds. They put on a lot of events.
Mm-hmm.
So they get people together, they do presentations, but they don't do one-on-one meetings because we're sort of the money is in one place. We get
Yep.
monthly reports, all that kind of stuff. So I guess it really depends on the nature of your business, what you do. But I feel that they don't disappear on us. They're always
Mhm.
giving us useful information. They're very responsive when you have a question. All of those things are
Yep.
important. But so it's a bit different than an insurance business, which is a
Yeah,
different
but nevertheless,
dynamic there.
we have a large clientele. Let's say, like in your case, you're dealing with I refer to as a manufacturer, wealth manager, as such. Um, those approaches still need to be personalized, as such. They need to be up close and personal with you, even though they might be doing it on a large mass basis. So you still feel special and welcome, and you're getting information that's tailored for you.
Yeah.
Uh, so same techniques apply whether you're a small business or a large business. To me, are one of the mistakes young professionals make today. They think they can just jump on social media and put their stuff on LinkedIn, and the phone's going to ring. It doesn't work that way. Never has worked that way. Never will.
No, and it can take a ridiculous amount of time posting a million things. Yeah. I gave up on social media a long time ago as a good
Uh,
marketing for me. Some people it works.
yeah.
Sometimes the ability to chat up people and it's just anyway. But
I had a client that was
so
spending. Oh, sorry. I was going to say I have a client that was spending about 30 grand a year on social media, LinkedIn stuff.
that's a
And
lot.
that's a lot. And I laid out a program just like we talked there, and he's still on social media, but he's spending maybe 1,500, a couple of grand. So it dramatically reduces cost. He was able to reallocate those resources elsewhere
Yeah.
for a better return.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about referrals. So anybody
Mm-hmm.
listening to this, anybody needs to understand this, and everybody is bad at it except
Yes.
a very small percentage. We're afraid to ask for referrals. We don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to ask for referrals. We avoid asking for referrals. We apologize for asking referrals. So I can tell by that smile of yours that you know what to say in asking for referrals because, and I'll be honest, it's not something I was great at either. Although
Yeah.
a lot of my business did come from referrals.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have been on my list or they heard about me and they called me. But I didn't get referrals and reach out to people.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I didn't have to for whatever reason. But financial services is one that you have to be a little more proactive in reaching out there because
Yeah.
otherwise, just because your service as an insurance person or financial person is pretty much the same as everyone else's.
Yes.
So it's a very personal kind of thing. So with that preamble, what's the approach that you found works best for getting referrals?
So when I'm dealing with an established business, finance, insurance, they have a clientele. We got a continuation process. We set that the referral process that works best. You want to leverage your existing clients, your existing loyal clients for new ones. That's the philosophy that I work from. And the best way to do that is to make sure you have your continuation process in place. So you're doing something for them.
Yeah.
So then the language, it makes it easy to ask for referrals. And when I've shown this process to professionals, they go, oh. And so the first thing I teach them during the continuation midterm review, after they've done the stewardship and caught up on the family and update the database and all that stuff, you let the client know that, you're moving to 100% referral only business. And that's so you can give better time to clients like yourself. I might show them a one pager on the types of clients I like to work with and so forth. And then I'll brainstorm with the client.
Back up on that. You say you have a one pager that describes the kind of clients which you work with, and you'd show that to them so they can. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I see.
company size, certain niche markets, whatever the case may be. Sometimes, and that's difficult for some people to do. They never really thought about it that way. What's the characteristics and traits of your best clients, and to show someone who else they may know like that. And the advantage of working in niche markets is that, they often hunt in packs. So the earth moving contractor knows other earth moving contractors, and engineers know other engineers. And so it makes it easy to
Sure.
identify that.
Sure.
See, our job is to make it easy for our clients to help us. They're willing to give us referrals, but they need a process also so they can help us. They want us to have a successful business. My
Yep.
business is what kind of service you have. But quite often we take it for granted and we need to stop and educate them. So that's what I teach them how to do. Sometimes
So
I'll have them,
tell
oh, go ahead.
tell me more specific the kind of scripting you use
Hmm.
in that meeting to ask for referrals. Pretend I'm a client. What would you say to me?
I'll say, Robert, firstly, are you happy with the midterm stewardship? The advice I've given you so far, are you satisfied with that?
Yeah, I'm happy you're really giving me a good insight so I feel on top of things. Yes.
Yeah, great. Now, just before we wrap up, there's one last thing on the agenda I wanted to cover with you. My business over the last couple of years, I've been moving to 100% referral only business. I'm not there yet, but I'm making tracks to that. And the reason for that is because the more I deal by referrals, the more I can spend time with high quality, high value clients like yourself. And so firstly, what I'd like to do is show you that, the types of people I enjoy working with, are these. Now I'll have a list or describe them that way.
Okay.
And I'd like to brainstorm with you, Robert. Is there anyone you know that fits this sort of characteristics or traits that might benefit from the type of service that I've been providing for you? That's,
I like that language. So anyone you know that fits this profile essentially.
yeah,
Yeah. And so, and that's very different than do you have a referral you can give me?
yeah,
And what,
yeah,
you know, in working with clients, working with my own business, figuring out the language, it's so important. If you say one set of words, no results, another set of words, results.
yeah,
And if you don't figure that out, it's like a script to a play. If you
yeah.
say the wrong words, it doesn't make sense. So,
Well, to give you a
the
flip
thing
side to that,
is, I have to say this, the thing is, it doesn't cost any more to say the right words or the wrong words, or
yeah,
any more time.
yeah,
But when you find the words and you feel comfortable with it, all of a sudden you have people saying, yeah, I do know some people in that category. So then what do you say next?
yeah. So let me just give you, before I get to that, let me give you an alternative. So
Yeah.
sometimes I might do some research on LinkedIn and come up with 3 or 4 names they might know or some research otherwise.
Okay.
And then I'll say to the client, Mr. Client, I was doing some research on LinkedIn or whatever the case may be. There are 3 or 4 names I see you're connected with that look like they might be good fits for my business and for the type of work I do. Can we spend a few minutes brainstorming? I'd like to get your opinion on these and just get your thoughts and
Okay.
move on from there. Now, after I've gotten that, whether it's by education or by brainstorming some suggested names, I'll say, Robert, I'd like to ask you one or two things. Would you feel comfortable either introducing me, or when I reach out to them, can I mention the work that you and I have done together? Um, and usually they're going to say number 2, but I'd be surprised how often people say, I'm more than happy to do an email introduction, or I'm seeing them next week, or mention your name or something like that.
Right.
And then the second most important, and the follow up from that is, after I get the referral, I thank the client and I keep them informed. The reward clients want is, what happened? Keep me in touch. And it's, I called Joe last week. We met with Robert today. He's going to become a client. Thank you very much again. And that's the cycle. I don't want to repeat that again next year with that client.
Yep. Yep. So here's the next question. And often
Mm-hmm.
this is the sticking point. Robert, I got a lot of referrals, but I don't know how to reach out to those referrals or what to say,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel kind of embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. You can be stopped every step of the way,
You can.
and it's like, oh God, I've seen that so much. Okay, well, you got some referrals. So what's the basic telephone scripting, or do you send a letter and follow up, or what do you find has worked the best?
I advise, my favorite word I use with professionals is that you want to work from your comfort zone. We want to expand that comfort zone, but we want to start from your comfort zone because you're more likely to do it. So I like to send an email follow up with a phone call. I'll
Okay.
mix it up a bit. I'll advise sending an email, and then I might send another email, assuming that maybe it didn't arrive, gone to the spam folder, and then I'll follow up with a phone call. But because it's a referral of a person's name, you stand a very high likely chance of them taking your phone call. I always emphasize we're sending the email so they take your phone call. They're taking your phone call so that they agree to a meeting with you. You're not trying to sell anything at all, but
No,
the
it's
next
one
step.
step at a time.
Yep.
So what have you found is the best, simplest, clearest, most effective thing to say in the email?
Robert Milligan suggested that I reach out to you. He thought you might benefit from some of the services I've been providing to him. What I like to suggest is let's set up a brief call, brief time to explore common areas of interest and see where we go from there. So it's really, it's 70 words, 80 words.
So it's low key.
Very low key, low stress. And I'm really selling a
Yeah.
meeting and just a discussion.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll say, if you like what I say, great. If not, I promise you I'll be on my way. I mean,
Right.
that's it.
I've suggested similar things to people, and there's so many funny things. I say, okay, here's a template for a simple letter, 3 or 4 lines.
Yeah.
This is the connection. This is why I'm reaching. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I say, I want you to write it and let me see it before you send it. And then they send me a one-page letter this long. And I said, no, I wasn't kidding. 3 lines, right? Because they're trying to tell all the benefits of what they do and how they work, and you really can't sell effectively with a letter like that kind of
No,
service.
you can't. No, you can't.
It's impossible.
It's relationships.
And it's an introduction.
Yep.
And yeah, simple introduction like that. And you see, the more you say, there's more reasons for a no, because
Yes.
it's like, it gets too complicated, or it takes too long to read, or it's easier to strike you out than get a base hit. And that's all you're looking for, a base hit, right?
Yeah. But you'd be surprised how often when you use a referral approach
Yeah.
and you send an email and you can't get a hold of a person, so you send a follow-up. The number of times I've had someone apologize to me, hey, I'm sorry, I've been busy, I've been traveling, or went to my spam folder. Happy to meet you, or whatever, So it's you teach this, I know, Robert. It's the follow-up. You can't just send one. You gotta follow up, and sometimes it might take 3 to 4 or 5 times before you reach someone because they're busy. They got other things on, whatever. They're climbing the Himalayas or something. You don't know, so you just got to have a process in place to follow up.
What if they're climbing the Himalayas? Well, this is a good thing to emphasize, Clifton, because this is something I learned from our mutual friend, Jill Conrad.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote a book talking about this, and I can't remember which of the books it was, Snap Selling or something.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, you reach out to someone and they don't respond. And then we always take that personally. They're not interested. I'm not worthy, and all this stuff. And she says the number one reason for people not getting back to you is they're simply crazy busy like everybody else.
Yep.
So don't take it personally, because it's virtually never personal.
No.
Do you kind of like it when someone is persistent to get to you, not obnoxiously persistent, but they got an email, but then it slipped through the cracks, and then a week later I said, hey, John, as I mentioned, I was referred by so-and-so, et cetera, et cetera. I know you're probably really, really busy. Love the chance to chat with you for a few minutes because John said you had some of these issues. Is there a time we can get together? And if they don't respond to that, you wait another couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, they're apologetic that they didn't get back to you, and then you've got a bit of an advantage. It's like, and they feel they owe you something because you made an effort to reach out to them.
Yeah. I had a couple of recent experiences. I sent some follow-ups, and finally at my final email, I wrote, look, this is obviously a busy time for both of us. I'll try again in, down the road in a few months' time. CEO immediately contacted me. He says, "I'm sorry, I've been in the hospital. I had a heart operation.
Oh,
I just saw your email. Can we schedule time? Can you may call the next month or so, and we'll set something up." So you just, as you said, you can't take it personally. You just simply don't know.
yeah. I used a term for that:
Mhm.
friendly persistence.
Yes, yeah. I learned
Yeah.
something about persistence early in my career, and this goes to the heart of everything I do with professionals in sales and marketing, because you got to be persistent. And to me, what I'm passionate about is that until you get a client, nothing else happens. In a financial services business, you are in a sales and marketing business. Your product is manufactured from someone else. Your job is to sell it and build a business, retain a customer. Early in my career at AIG, I came across a executive. They needed some additional corporate travel coverage. They were going to some remote countries and doing some work with the executive team. He kept saying, "No, I think we have enough." And I was persistent with him on why he needed this coverage. And finally, they says, "Look, we'll take your advice. We'll just take it out and then we'll review it again." They had a major incident, and it came to several thousands of dollars, and they had to evacuate someone back home. And he thanked me. He says, "I thank you for your persistence." He says, "Otherwise, we would have never done anything." And that's the power of persuasion. That's the power of saying, it's not about you. It's about them. And so whether we're following up or trying to present our offering, if it's an ideal client, we owe it to present our best case so they understand what the benefits are of doing business with you and the rewards. So that's a theme I try to get across to particularly new professionals, but all professionals.
I hate to do this, but I got a
Hmm.
message that's a bit of an emergency and I got to handle it. So just stay there. I'll edit
Okay.
this out. This has never happened before, but crap happens sometimes. So 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay,
Steve?
okay, so where were we?
I think I was talking about the my philosophy and concept of why professionals need to have sales and marketing skills, because you can't survive in just technical. And the mistake people make is that they think they get paid for what they know, and that's wrong. You're getting paid for persuading people to buy and do business with you, and your products are the vehicle for them to achieve their objectives. And
What have you found are some of the big resistances and fears to the selling and marketing process?
so repeat that again.
The resistances and fears
Hmm,
people have to the selling and marketing process.
I think the biggest fear and resistance is that they simply were never taught how, and they're afraid. They may not actually tell you they're scared, but you can sort of see it, and so that's why you want to just break it up. And so I go back to the beginning when we segment their clients and just start there. They're talking to people that already know and trust them, so they're not talking to strangers, and that sort of eases into that process. But really they haven't been taught; they have no process for it. So we start from where they are in their comfort zone and work something out that they can do tomorrow from where they are. And then we build from there. But fear is the number one thing.
Yeah, it's funny how people are afraid of other people. We're afraid of what people think about us. We're
Yeah,
afraid about so many silly things that are really irrelevant in so many ways.
yeah.
You know,
And fear leads to procrastination, and then it snowballs from there.
yeah,
And as you know, more than anyone else, if you procrastinate in your own business, you're not going to have any clients, and the whole thing falls apart. So it's
yes. And then, as they say, you are screwed.
yes,
But it happens, and this is why I was in business. You're in business because people
mm-hmm.
feel, oh man, it's so simple in so many ways, but it's so you have to wrap your head around what's really happening. And I like the fact that you wrap it around this continuation process, which is a continuing the relationship, helping them, and see how you
Yeah,
can continue to serve them in the best way, which then feels good because you're of service.
yeah. And we all have comfort zones,
Yeah.
and uh, we just got to work. And it's not you to go deep inner to find yours, but you got to say this is where I need to start with, and slowly apply that. And I got a young man that I've been coaching, part of a large group, but he within that he runs. There's a business within that group. Newly appointed, and as a leader or manager to this business unit, he's never sold before, and so the stuff we've been talking about, continuation and uh, working within your comfort zone. So I spoke to him the other day. He said I had my best month ever. I generate some referrals from existing clients. Um, that are, we got, I don't know the number he gave me, but several $1,000s in revenue for this month. That's more than we've ever done in the last few years. And it's all from just talking to our existing clients and using the process and so forth. He feels much more comfortable with the selling process. But guess what? We never use the word sales. He just feels comfortable talking and managing a process with existing clients. For him, he's not selling.
Well, the words sell, sales, and selling are the worst words in the English
Yes.
language in so many
Yeah.
ways because
Yeah.
it connotes ideas of pressure. The other
Yeah.
thing, Clifton, that I think is important is if you're not in touch with people, they're not thinking about you.
Yeah.
And how can they refer you or talk about you if you're never around?
Yeah.
And so someone that's using your process has a whole different kind of relationship. So when they meet someone and says, I'm looking for insurance, they're going to think of you right away. Well, this
Exactly.
guy, and the reason I like him, he stays in touch with me
Yeah.
and meets my needs as opposed to, he has the lowest insurance rate or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's relationship.
You're absolutely right. And, I always remind everyone from accounting to law, whatever, your top clients are someone else's top prospects. So you cannot take those for granted. You need to make sure you have watertight doors to protect those relationships.
Right.
And I like your version of keep in touch marketing. All that comes into play to make sure you're building exit rings around those clients so they don't go anywhere else.
You ever done anything around events, gatherings, seminars,
Mm-hmm.
educational opportunities? Does that fit with well, it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense with insurance. Maybe it would. Around
Well, it does.
investments, perhaps.
Yeah, it does. It does. And so some of the things that um, some of my clients do, they'll run lunch and learns, for instance. They'll get a few clients in the boardroom. In fact, I use the analogy with their clients. I said, you have a nice boardroom here, except for your board meetings and sales meetings is empty. That could be earning you revenue by bringing your top clients in and bringing in speakers and whatever the case may be. So lunch and learns is one. I also show clients how to set what I call a client advisory board. You get your best clients together, show them your plans, and ask for their opinion, and then ask them for referrals afterwards, one on one, when you follow up with them down the track and so forth, like that.
Yeah.
And there's other client networking events, so you're bringing clients together so they can meet each other, and that's a wonderful opportunity too. So you're more or less the conduit. So these, once again, these are all low cost, low impact ways of marketing, but it's also a way for generating referrals without directly having to ask for referrals. So, for instance, you have a wine tasting event. You ask your key client to bring along a friend or colleague, and all of a sudden they're there. And then, you get a chance to talk to people and so forth. So, yeah, to answer your question, it all gets bundled in. But it all starts with that foundation of knowing who your clients are. You can't do a lunch and learn if you know who your top clients are, who to invite and so forth. So it all starts with that continuation segmentation
Right.
process. Yeah.
I started my business by doing a lot of speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an office in downtown San Francisco that had a meeting space, and I started doing, it was called networking lunch,
Mm-hmm.
and people would come and meet, and anything to get people interacting and meeting me and talking, and then you have people to follow up with, as opposed to I'm sitting in my office
Yeah.
by my little old lonesome, and it's like nothing's happening. So I kept things moving, and before I did my email list, I had a mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent postcards for events and stuff like that. The thing that gets me, Clifton, is all this stuff is so simple, yet hardly anybody does it.
Well, it's not that it's simple, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And if you come from the technical side, that's all you know. So like a doctor of bad bedside manner, they're only different. No one's ever taught them how to human relations. And so a lot of these guys come out of technical school. They graduated from the Wealth Management Institute, got their certificate, secret decoder ring, and a handshake, but no one's taught them, the next step from there. And so I'm like you. I'm surprised how I used to call them dumb, but they just simply don't know, not aware. And it's our
not
job
to feel bad.
educate them. Yeah.
So what are some final words of wisdom you have for especially financial professionals if they really want to build their client base?
We all sell. Dan Pink has a great book on that, The Sell is Human. We all sell, and we're doing it every day in our jobs. We're selling to our suppliers, we're selling to our partners, we're selling to sometimes our clients to do certain things, but we're not applying it to a wider aspect of our business. And I'll tell you a story that first got me started in the thinking process. I grew up in Sacramento, California, even though I live here in Australia. And at the age of 17, I wanted to join the Navy. My brother was in the Navy. And so I hopped on my bike and went down to the recruiter's office. And this guy, who was about 6'3", all white uniform, immaculate man, the most impressive man I've ever seen, came in and said, "May I help you, son?" I says, "Yeah, I want to be like you. I want to look like you." And he sat me down. He educated me because I was only 17. He went to my house, spoke to my family, educated him on the process. And I was watching this guy and how he built relationships and my mother felt comfortable with them and so forth. So she signed the forms and I joined the Navy. His name was Bill Blankenship. He left a lasting impression on me of how you sell something, how you sell yourself. And he was selling the Navy, but more importantly, he was selling himself and so forth. And that's carried forward. And, when I work with professionals today, I tell them people buy you before they buy Merrill Lynch or Bank of America or anything like that, or IBM. They have to buy you first. And the most important skill you can have is you got to have your technical knowledge, but you also have to have your persuasion and sales skills. If you have those two things, you can write your own ticket in this industry if you apply it and work it to your advantage. So that's my message to everyone. It's a valuable skill to have. There's nothing wrong with selling. You're not a fool or brush man. You're not selling Amway. We're selling professional services that can improve people's lives.
One of my shifts was realize I had to take the attention off myself and just get interested in them.
Yeah.
And if I could get interested in someone, I almost wanted them to convince me that they needed my help instead of me try to convince them otherwise. It's like, okay, so here's your situation, and so how can I help you? What do you feel you need? And people almost sell themselves as opposed to ever feeling any pressure.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I like that, and I like your approach because it's a two-way street. When we're having that discussion whether it be referral or reach out to someone, it's a two-way interview process. You see if they're a fit for you and you're a fit for them. And
Yeah.
hopefully, they both align. But there's nothing wrong with it they're not if they're not a fit for you or vice versa. You let them know.
Yeah. And so it continues. People
Yes.
will always need help with this, maybe more than
Yes.
ever. And, and this illusion that if I get AI generated letters every day to prospecting letters,
Yeah.
and they're terrible.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if they're AI generated. They're not even that good. They're doing some kind of a mass mailing, and they
Yeah.
say, we've seen your website and need that work, and please call us. And I don't know, man.
Yeah. I
You
get
just
about a
have to
dozen of
send
those a day. Yeah.
thousands of emails to
Yes.
get any response to that.
Yeah.
As opposed, find a way to have a conversation with people based on something that's substantial.
Yeah.
So,
They're trying to market on the masses and so
yeah,
forth. But when you have your own business, whether it be financial services or any kind of professional services, it's not that human connection.
yeah,
And you don't need the whole world. You only need a tiny slice. That's it. A tiny slice of your marketplace to have a great business and a great career and a great living. It's not a lot.
yeah. So, Clifton, thank you so much for taking the time to enlighten us a little bit about the selling process. You make it sound so easy, which is good.
It does take work.
Of
But
course, it
also,
takes work.
Robert, I'd
Yeah,
like to thank you. I mean, you're one of the thought leaders in this business, in this industry, and you've over your decades have decoded the experience, have put it out there, and people like myself have benefited from it. And as I learn, I'm able to relearn that and teach that. Some of my teachings comes from some of the things I've learned from you and Jill and many other people along the way. Someone asked me, do I have an ideal role model? I says, no, it doesn't exist. It's a combination of lots of little pieces out there that we put together and make it our own. But, it all starts from people like yourself that took the time to, you know, decode it.
yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Great.